Our next piece comes from the Vienna Genesis, which dates from the early 6th century. It is considered an illuminated manuscript, which is made of pigment on vellum. This one is in the Austrian National Library in Vienna. In regards to its style, there are lively, softly molded figures. We can see that this artist was probably classically trained because in both images we see contrapposto, foreshortening, shadowing, and perspective. It is a shallow setting, which shows this transition to the new Byzantine style, but we're still seeing some of those elements that I'll talk about later. Okay, so the manuscripts were often made of very costly materials. This one is technically considered a Byzantine manuscript, but it is here to highlight the concept of just illuminated manuscripts in general. So this is the oldest surviving copy of this type of book, and it dates from the early 6th century. And in this type of a manuscript, the text is on top and the images are on bottom. And this type of manuscript preserves the earliest narratives of the stories in the Bible. And they're definitely showing narrative illustrations of Bible stories. We have 24 surviving folios or pages, and there were originally 96. So we only have 24 left. The sheets of paper are actually made of calf skin. That's what vellum means. And it is purple dyed vellum. And also it was written in gold and silver ink. Both of those materials suggest that this was a royal commission, purple being the color of royalty, and having access to silver ink is something that was very rare. Also having a book or a codex, which is what this is, an early book format, that's a new type of a thing instead of a scroll. So this is now known as the Vienna Genesis. This is definitely considered a luxury item because of the materials and the fact that this is all going to be done and made by hand. The top part is written in Greek, and then the illustrations below the text are not necessarily corresponding with the text on each page. Instead, it's a continuous narrative that combines events within different places within the story to a single narrative space. So I'm showing you two pages from the Vienna Genesis. The one on the left is Jacob wrestling the angel, and it's kind of an odd story. What we're seeing is, as I said, a narrative. So throughout this whole area, we're going to see events take place that show the events of the story. So up here, we're seeing this is Jacob right here, and he is leading down to the bridge. He is leading his wives that are on donkeys, and then also his sons are behind them. Jacob is wearing brown and a red tunic, and they are in the process of crossing a river. We're seeing the river below, but we're also seeing the bridge, and then the story picks up again right about here when Jacob is going to meet this man. Jacob is separated from his family, and he wrestles with this man, and this man is often interpreted later on as being an angel, but the wrestling part, it's actually a very physical altercation happening here. In fact, the man is going to like his hand is sort of at the hip of Jacob, and he actually puts the hip joint out, and so at that point Jacob asks for this man's blessing, or the angel to bless him, and so the angel does, and the family goes on their way. After this story, the patriarch or Jacob, is no longer called Jacob, but he's now called Israel. So we're seeing this as being an important transformation in the event that transforms Jacob's life. Okay, so a little bit about the image that makes this a transition between the late antique style and the Byzantine style. One of the first things is the bridge. The things that kind of make it naturalistic, you see one of the sons is looking over the bridge, and that is a very normal thing to do when you're crossing a bridge, to look over and look at the water. So that is something that implies naturalism. Also with the bridge, we see arcades. We also can see in the background, we see columns that have classical details. And then another area we could see classical influence is with this wife in pink. Her back is to us, but we are seeing her body underneath, like in the drapery or the folds of her clothing. And so that is still implying the classical era. Same thing here with the Jacob and the angel, is that we can see different parts of the body being shown underneath the drapery, which is very much from the classical sense. Also, this classical relief, it could be, if you were to stretch it out, it could almost be a frieze. So the artist is trying to stretch out a linear narrative, but make it fit into the space of this book. It's an attempt at showing depth, even though the figures up here are pretty much the same size as the figures down here. We still get this sense of depth from the way that the story unfolds with a narrative style. It is classical and realistic, and elements are at odds with, or there is a tension with, the more Byzantine elements here. It's definitely more flat in a lot of different areas, and that makes it Byzantine. The audience for this is probably for a royal household, and we know that because of the materials. Although this looks black now, the writings in Greek, it was originally in silver and had been tarnished. But the richness of the materials used and the high quality materials of the purple dyed vellum suggests that this is a royal patronage. And it would have been someone who was reading this would have been someone who was learned in reading ancient Greek and, appreciated the images below. Okay, for the Vienna Genesis, for the Rebecca and Eliezer at the well, another type of continuous narrative, and that story comes from the book of Genesis. In the book of Genesis, Abraham wants to find a wife for his son Isaac. So he sends one of his servants, Eliezer, to find one. Eliezer stops at this well to water his camels and prays that Isaac's future wife will help him. And so then on scene, Rebecca arrives, and Eliezer knows that this is Isaac's future wife. So the message here is that God will intervene and ensure a sound message for Abraham, for his son. So we see Rebecca twice on this image. We first see her walking on her way to the well, and then down here we see her helping with the watering and with the well there. And so we see her walking away from a walled city, which is classical, with a jug on her shoulder to fetch water. A colonnaded road leads towards the spring, and also there's a personified by a pagan nude water nymph, which you can see right here, and who is holds a flowing jar, and that recalls ancient Greek and Roman artwork. The reclining nude stands at a stark contrast to the heavily draped and fully covered body of Rebecca, which is very common in depicting women in Christian art. In the foreground, Rebecca appears again, She's identifiable because she's wearing the same outfit. Her jug is now full, and she encounters a thirsty camel driver and offers him water to drink. Since he is Abraham's servant in search of a bride, her generosity makes him think that this is Isaac's bride.